Right now, we might be watching one of the strangest turns in modern US foreign policy unfold in real time. And the craziest part is, nobody seems entirely sure what the actual rules are anymore. Today, we're diving into the ceasefire agreement involving Donald Trump and Iran. And the deeper you look, the less sense it seems to make. To understand why this is so unusual, you have to go back to what the United States has been demanding from Iran for decades. Across multiple administrations, the core expectations barely change. First, Iran was not supposed to develop or maintain long-range missile capabilities. Second, uranium enrichment was off the table entirely, because once that door opens, nuclear weapons become a real possibility. And third, Iran needed to cut ties with and stop supporting militant groups across the Middle East. Those 3 points weren't suggestions. They were considered red lines, non-negotiable pillars of US strategy. On the other side, Iran had its own vision of what a deal should look like. From their perspective, control over the Strait of Hormuz was essential. Their missile program was not up for discussion. Uranium enrichment was a sovereign right, and the network of allied groups throughout the region, the so-called Axis of Resistance, was untouchable. In other words, both sides entered negotiations with positions that didn't just differ, they directly contradicted each other. Now here's where things start to get strange. About a day before a deadline that Trump himself had set, his administration rejected Iran's conditions outright. That part followed the expected script. But then, almost immediately after agreeing to the ceasefire, Trump publicly suggested that those same conditions might actually be open for discussion. That kind of reversal raises serious questions, because if those long-standing US demands are suddenly negotiable, then we're not just talking about a tactical shift, we're talking about a fundamental change in how American power is applied in the region. And if those concessions were truly on the table, it could be seen as one of the most significant retreats of US influence in Middle Eastern policy in modern history, especially when you factor in the broader context, ongoing tensions with allies, and a general pullback from traditional partnerships. At this stage, everything is still developing. There hasn't even been a direct face-to-face meeting between US and Iranian officials yet. That's expected to happen in Pakistan, which means that up to now, most of the communication has been indirect, passed through intermediaries, filtered, and possibly reshaped along the way. So while there's been a lot of talk about negotiations, the reality is that the two sides haven't actually sat down across the table until now. Meanwhile, Iran isn't waiting around. They're moving forward based on their interpretation of what the ceasefire allows, and that interpretation looks a lot like their original demands. Oil exports have increased, control over the Strait of Hormuz remains firmly in their hands, and ships moving through the area are still being regulated under Iranian terms. That includes requiring vessels to apply for passage, disclose their cargo, and pay fees, roughly $1 per barrel or millions per ship, before being allowed through, often under partial escort. This is already happening. It's not theoretical. Enforcement began on April 8th, right in the middle of what is supposed to be a ceasefire. That directly contradicts statements from Trump, who has described the agreement as ensuring open and unrestricted access through the strait. But on the ground, or rather on the water, that's clearly not how things are playing out. Iran is acting as if it holds operational control, and it's enforcing that control in real time. If this gap between words and reality continues, it's going to create serious credibility issues. And we're already seeing reactions from within Trump's own political orbit. Even figures like Laura Loomer, someone known for strong loyalty, have publicly criticized the situation, calling it one of the worst foreign policy moves in recent memory and framing it as a major win for Iran. Inside Washington, the atmosphere doesn't look stable either. There are signs of internal friction, confusion, and possibly even a lack of clear direction. Whether this is the result of strategic recalculation, fatigue with the situation, or something else entirely, it's hard to say. But the outcome is the same: unpredictability. And that's what makes the upcoming face-to-face meeting so important. Because up until now, both sides have been operating based on assumptions, interpretations, and indirect messaging. Once they actually meet, those assumptions are going to collide with reality, and when that happens, we'll get a much clearer picture of what this ceasefire actually is, and what it isn't. The problem is, trying to predict how that meeting will go is nearly impossible. The signals coming out of the White House have been inconsistent, and the situation itself keeps shifting. One moment it looks like a firm stance, the next it feels like everything is up for negotiation again. So for now, all anyone can really do is watch, because whatever happens next, it's not going to be simple, and it's definitely not going to be boring. What do you think about this situation? Do you see this as a strategic move or a serious mistake? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this breakdown useful, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next videos. See you soon!